Greg and Keith passed away last year. What do you remember most about each of them as performers and as friends?
What do I remember most? Well, I remember playing lots of great concerts with them, that's for sure. And I remember them as performers being like highly professional, that's for sure. So my memories in general are all very positive and very good towards both of them.
And when you look back on ELP as it was in the beginning, what is for you personally and professionally the legacy of the band?
I think the fact that we sort of were a keyboard band, the fact that we were a very English-sounding, quintessentially English-sounding band, taking classical music and adapting it. So taking a European format, basically, and putting it into mainstream sort of like rock and roll, commercial sort of radio rock music. I mean, that's, I think, what we were all about. We managed to do that exceptionally well.
Now, you've been in numerous successful rock trios. What is it about the trio that gives it more an advantage compared to other kinds of configurations?
I think when you're in a trio, you've got a couple of things which are going on. Number one, you've got the fact that all of the players need to pull their weight all of the time. It means you've really got to sort of like concentrate on what you're doing. And the main objective is to try and make it sound as big as possible without compromising in any way. I think number two is that the trio is the ideal vehicle really for any drummer because there's lots of space. And for most musicians, when there's just three of you, there's more space, there's more opportunity to do things. And obviously there's a big opportunity to overplay and destroy it. So it's a very, very sort of clever sort of balance you've got to strike. But it works marvelously well for me. I discovered it when I was very, very young. And I was always very keen to sort of try and keep that trio sort of situation alive.
Now, you're also known as a fine art painter. What are some of the similarities between creating on a canvas and also playing music?
Well, what I actually do is I actually paint with light, shadows, and reflections. And this is created by using LED drumsticks that light up. When you pick them up, the tip of the stick illuminates. And I set myself up in a dark room, about 12 foot square, with one guy holding sort of handheld cameras. And we figure out various positions. And I start to play. And we manage to catch the movement of light across and back across the drum set. And obviously with the reflective surfaces around me, they throw various shadows into the loop, which can be captured as well. It's all to do with the different shutter speeds, and it's to do with basically my movement and what I'm deciding to play. I've just found that there's been a connection between light, shadows and reflections and music. When I play certain things on the drums to do with music that I've recorded in the past, there are definite images which are recreated all the time because of the arm movement. Some are better than others. It can take up to about 7 hours to get a good canvas happening, but it's a modern sort of art form. And as I say, it's not hidden anymore. I mean, this is available for everyone to do. I've just been doing it probably longer than most people. In actual fact, the concept started in about 73, when I used to tape light bulbs to the drumsticks with a cable running down to a battery, and I used to mime playing the drums. I had my picture taken. The picture was so famous, it made my local sort of newspaper where I lived in a town called Birmingham, which is in the Midlands, the centre of England, very much the same as Detroit, a car town. They built Jaguars and Land Rovers there. Anyway, this particular picture that I had taken was the beginning of this concept. You roll forward 40 years, 45 years, now we have the technology with computers, digital cameras, and of course the LED drumsticks, which were indestructible. We can now actually perform, and we can produce a new form of artwork.
Now, when you're behind the kit and everything's clicking on stage, where do you go in your head?
It's very hard to sort of say. It doesn't always happen that way. You have moments when that's going on. There are moments when you're struggling. And when it's really working very, very well, it's really easy to play. It's like the easiest job in the world. When it's not working well, it's probably the most tedious Not boring, but the most, difficult situation to be in. It's not working. When it is working, it is, I hate to use the word, but it is magic.
Well, I was going to say, too, is if the second that you actually thought about it, you might actually lose it. You know what I mean?
Sorry?
Like if you actually thought about what you were doing while you were doing it, you might actually lose it.
The thought process doesn't really work like that. It's all automatic, really, when you play. It just depends on how the memory banks, how the tablets fall into place, when you're playing. And sometimes you're really sharp, and sometimes you're really not. But you shouldn't really have to think too much. You can never think about what you played. You can't think about what you're about to play. You can only be in that moment in time.
Is it almost like time doesn't exist in those moments?
Sort of.
Well, it's one thing to have a successful band, and it's another thing to have lightning strike twice. But you've been in several successful bands. What do you attribute? Yeah. What do you attribute that to? Talent, being at the right place at the right time, or both?
To be perfectly honest with you, I think it's a little bit of absolutely everything. In 1968, when I joined the Crazy World of Arthur Brown, I had no idea that the band would have a #1 single and a #1 album at the same time. All I did know is that the music they were playing, that kind of psychedelia type of rock, or whatever you want to call it, it was theatrical rock in a way before David Bowie and all of that stuff. Arthur used to wear a fire helmet, he used to dress up in various clothes and things. I kind of, knew immediately that was a blueprint for the future. And that was very, very important. And I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And with ELP, that was a moment in time where I was the hot gun in town, and they needed a drummer. And I had my own group anyway, Atomic Rooster, who also had a #1 single with a track called Tomorrow Night, who were also doing incredibly well. But, the ELP thing was probably a bit better musically. Well, it turned out to be a lot better musically. And I jumped ship. So a lot of it is to do with luck, knowing the music that you want to play and that you believe is worthy of that moment in time. And moving on from there, it's the same as Asia. Asia became very popular only for a brief period of time, maybe 2-3 years. But that was to do with that whole new social media movement, MTV, VH1 and all that stuff, the Walkman, all those things which are coming into play. And, we hit it high, and we were lucky, and we had a #1 album and single for about 7 weeks of it. So, there's an element of luck, but there's an element of knowing what is current, and it's good. You have to understand what you're playing and what you're looking at, wanting to do. If you're just chasing fame and money, forget it, because it doesn't really work that way.
I always feel that the Crazy World of Arthur Brown never got the credit they deserve for launching that whole movement.
No, I agree with you 100%. Arthur Brown is still performing today. He's in his sort of early 70s. He's a fantastic person. I've seen him recently, within the last sort of 12 months, and an unbelievable person. And he never did get the credit. Unfortunately, it was the old chestnut of the music industry being very young still in 1968, not having the right management. I personally didn't know enough to contribute to the direction of the band, from a business point of view. I know sonically, musically, the band was right on it. The concept was absolutely perfect. As I say, it was a blueprint we were setting out for rock and roll. But it was it's just that moment in time that just didn't work, as far as having the right management, understanding, what we were doing, and being able to prolong it for us and push it forward even.
What sticks out most when you think about London in the mid to late 60s? Because it was the epicenter of the world for music, for art, and for fashion, and you were at the center of it all. What do you remember most about that era?
It was a very exciting time. It was very creative time. There was lots of great sort of musicians, but what was happening in that period, there were great bands being developed. You had this great sort of modern sort of 60s sound, with bands like The Who were just phenomenal, and then you had all that kind of sweet stuff, which was the Small Faces, but with a great singer, Stevie Marriott. And then you had that heavier stuff, Deep Purple. So the actual music, the variety of music was immense, and it was an incredible environment to be in, really.
Well, what is the life performing and creating and traveling and seeing the world and interacting with people? What has that taught you about what it means to be a human being?
Well, to be honest with you, when you're traveling, you learn. Traveling itself is a fine education. And what you do learn throughout life is what the problems that I have today and the problems I see people having today are the same problems I saw yesterday and the year before that and the year before that. So nothing changes. We actually all get a little more professional but still make the same mistakes. Young people coming up within the business still make the same mistakes as what I did. So nothing changes on that front. But the actual learning curve is a lot quicker. Today with all of the sort of social media and things like that, news travels a lot faster. So all of that is great, and all of that really contributes to sort of anyone's career. But what it's taught me over all the years is that you have to stay on top of your game. You can't be complacent, and if you're doing it, then you're doing it well. The minute you don't do it as well as what you should do, then get out. Leave, because one thing you can never do is fool the public. The public know when you're giving your all, and they know when you're playing well. So that's really important, and that's what I've learned over the years, that there is no substitute for effort and trying really to deliver the best show every night. It's a must. It has to be done, and it will be done.